We're here in the Smith of Derby works with the clock from Bishop's Waltham. The project is a complete restoration of the clock, and it's being done under my guidance with 3 apprentices here at Smith's, so they enhance their knowledge of how to deal with these sorts of clocks. The clock is an end-to-end cage frame clock from around the 1600s that was probably originally a virgin folio escapement. It was converted after 1600 into a pendulum with an anchor escapement, and then subsequently changed again to a double 3-legged gravity escapement. That work was done by John Padbury in 1873, and 2 parts of this clock are marked with his initials and that date. So when it was converted to an anchor escapement, a pendulum was obviously put in at that time. The current pendulum is a later replacement, probably by John Padbury in 1873, when he put the double 3-legged gravity escapement in. That pendulum is a wooden rod with a bob which weighs over 300 kilos, and it actually sits hanging in the floor below the clock's location in the ringing chamber, which is on the ground floor, but it sits about 10 foot in the air. There is a safety mechanism. It was added probably about the same time as John Padbury did his work, and it sits at the very top of the pendulum, and it's a catch frame which, if the pendulum suspension spring does break, it allows the top block just to settle down a couple of millimetres onto the frame, obviously to stop 300 kilos from plummeting to the floor below. So talking about the setting dial allows the person who maintains the clock to set the dial to time. Now the outside dial, the exterior dial, actually goes off the back of the frame here and obviously turns in a clockwise direction. For that to happen, this dial here has to turn anti-clockwise. This pointer hand has to turn anti-clockwise. You can see a mistake immediately, because this dial actually runs clockwise and is in fact a dial from a long case clock, which again, when John Padbury did his conversion, he probably just picked something up that he had in his workshop and used that. It's actually marked Alex Irving, London, but Alex Irving has got nothing to do with this clock at all. And as I said, it runs in the wrong direction anyway. So when this clock was in the church, the frame was actually painted red. Clearly not an original red, it was a much later painting. When we got the clock back here to Smith of Derby, we analysed the paint layers that were on the frame, and going down from the top it was red. Before that it was a dark green colour. Before that it was a pale blue, and before that the original paint was a dark blue. As so much of the paint was lost in the restoration process, we decided to, with the agreement of the customer, repaint the frame completely back to the original blue that it was when it was first made. So that's the reason for the dark blue that's on it now. At Smith's of Derby, we also had to fabricate a new winding handle. The original winding handle, because the clock was out of use for so long, had been lost. So we actually made a new winding handle for it as well. So because it's a complete restoration, it gives us the chance to enhance the knowledge of the apprentices in clocks like this, how to conserve them, how to restore them in the proper way. There was a lot of damage on this clock. There was a lot of previous fixing, which had been done by somebody else, which was not in a good way. So there were issues with the clock right from when we collected it, and we've been able to work with those apprentices all the way through all the different stages of repairing, conserving, repainting, to end up with the clock as you see it now. What's been really interesting about this clock, especially for me, is that this clock was given a grant by the Church Buildings Council for this restoration, and I actually sit on the Church Buildings Council Clock Conservation Committee, so I was part of the group that helped with the award of the grant. So I've been following this clock all the way through. The Church of England have decided that out of all the clocks they've awarded grants to this year, this clock is the one that's going to feature in their annual report. So in the section that covers the clocks that were awarded grants this year, this is the clock that's going to be featured. I think for both myself and Smith of Derby, this is a real acknowledgement of the work that's gone into this clock. So the apprentices are now in a position where they can use their knowledge that they've learned on this clock for the future, for any other clocks like this that they work on. Probably not one that's been converted like this, but certainly clocks of this age.